Welcome back to Saturn Sirens. Today we are going to be talking about the fifth house. I'm Chase.
I'm Mary.
I'm Pierre.
And Mary, take it away.
Hi, guys. So, the fifth house, it's actually my favorite house or area of life in the natal chart. It's ruled by Leo and the sun. So, the fifth house rules good fortune. It's about your children, your creations, your creativity, your hobbies, but it's also where you find joy in life and it's where you have fun. So, it's a very positive area of life. Usually, if you have planets in this area of life, you possess a strong sense of charisma, you're very magnetic, and you possess Leo qualities, no matter what the sign is on this house. So, some astrologers think that it's tied into good fortune that we bring into this lifetime from past lives. But I feel like it shows our childhood more than anything else. It's how you play and have fun as a child. Sometimes it even represents the father since it's ruled by the sun, or it shows your relationship with him at least. And most of all, it shows our children since we create them and our creations. So it rules over creativity. So, like, if you have Saturn here, like I do, you usually end up turning your hobby into your career, or you could feel like your sense of fun is just restricted in life, at least earlier on, or like you had to grow up too soon and you didn't really get to have much of a childhood. If you have the sun here, it's very fortunate since it's the natural ruler of this house and it implies somebody who is full of life, the life of the party, the center of attention by nature, and is kind of like a child at heart or remains that way throughout their life. So, overall, it's a great area of life. I have a Capricorn stellium here, and although Saturn and Uranus and Neptune are in my fifth house, which are typically not easy ones, I still feel like there is a big focus for me on this area of life in a good way. I also forgot to mention that it rules over dating and romance. So, and also casual sex. It's not like deep Scorpio type of soul bonding sex like the eighth house. It's more lighthearted, like affairs and romance, but it can also show true love, especially if you have Venus here. And it's like the type of love that makes you feel like you're a kid again. So it's a very fortunate area of life. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about what your planets are in this house, but mine are just Capricorn, and there's been a big focus for me here, but I'll let you guys talk as well. So take it away, Chase.
For my fifth house, that's where my IC falls. So it's something I haven't really thought completely through. I think it makes some sense. Also, I have Amor, the asteroid. That's all I have there.
You mean 1221?
I believe so.
Well, actually, when the IC is in the fifth house, it almost always implies that you were raised by your father.
And I was.
Sometimes it also implies that you had a very fortunate childhood. That was
And I did.
I had a client who has the IC there, and she was raised by her grandparents.
Mm-mm.
Interesting. What sign did she have? Was it Gemini?
No, that's Aries there.
Oh, me too.
I've seen that with the IC in the third house, like they spent more time with their extended family or they were raised by like aunts or uncles,
I've seen
etc.
it with the third house too, but yeah. It's usually if the IC is not in the fourth house, it's some sort of different type of upbringing.
The rule of thumb that I read is that they had a fun childhood if there aren't malefics. So it's like a good thing. Well, what do you have in your fifth house?
I just have Neptune at 0 degrees, so I don't know, obviously, because Neptune's there.
Yeah, seeing that. I did your reading. I actually really like Neptune in the fifth because Neptune's exalted in Leo. and it's tied into creativity. So the fifth house is all about creativity. So I think it's really strong in the fifth house, even though, and is yours is in Capricorn too, right?
No, it's Sagittarius.
Oh yeah, I forget you're a different generation. A lot of us, or at least my generation, have Neptune, Saturn, and Uranus all in Capricorn. So that's pretty fun. Obviously, being sarcastic, but a lot have it conjunct. I have Saturn conjunct Neptune, like by 2 degrees in my fifth house. So dating for me was like I took it so seriously, Saturn, but then Neptune, I was always deceived, and I never knew who like really cared about me and who didn't, or what was real or what was fake. And I was always projecting my ideal of my partner or whatever onto the person I was dating. So it's such a weird conjunction to have Saturn and Neptune. But ultimately, I think what helps is that Saturn is in domicile and Neptune is kind of in its fall in Capricorn. So I think Saturn triumphs, or at least I hope so.
I would say for me, I probably have the same type of just a lot of deception and stuff in the people that I dated. And I also have, I mean, I have an out of sign square to Venus with Neptune. So that would also add to that. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I see that a lot with Neptune in the fifth, Neptune in the seventh or eighth. Almost always they get deceived by their partners, and with Venus square Neptune. So I really dislike having Neptune. I would say that one is my least favorite placement in the fifth house. I could live with the other ones, but Neptune sucks.
For me, Aries, I guess, makes sense because I'm very authentic in dating. Like, I really, like, I will go into a dating thing being like, I'm gonna hold my own and, like, not fall for them and, like, I don't know, and I just do, and I'm very straightforward and authentic and, like, not manipulative at all, which I don't know. I end up, it's good and bad, but that makes sense. And I'm
So
very passionate about my relationships.
are you like the pursuer, like the Aries?
Most of the time, I don't know because yes and no. I mean, the guys I end up dating, they pursue me, but if I'm gonna pursue someone, it's because they don't like me, and I like that,
So
and then it
funny.
doesn't work out.
So actually, I heard the best planet to have, hands down, in the fifth is Venus.
Yeah.
Venus is like the most fortunate in the fifth house of all the houses. And if you have Jupiter here, you can usually have lots of kids, like lots of them,
Ooh.
Yeah.
or like different like baby mamas or baby daddies even, because of just the nature of Jupiter. And if you have or like if you have Chiron here, that one's really sad. A lot of times they either lost their dad young, that's the worst, or even had like a miscarriage, or even sometimes sadly lost a child. Other times it's not as serious, where like they just their sense of fun was restricted in childhood. So my son actually has this placement. I'm always worried about it and like trying to encourage him to have fun, but he also has it in Aries, like you do.
Mhm.
I talked to somebody else actually with that placement, and apparently the way it played out for them is they were very defiant, and they like never would do what they didn't take authority well, so they were like always getting in trouble in school and stuff. But
That's how I feel like my Chiron is, and it's in Virgo in the 10th house. Like, I just reject authority
oh
so
yeah,
much.
to see that. Especially Capricorns. I feel like they are the authority, so it's like they don't.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I almost identify more with Aquarius than Capricorn because Capricorn is more traditional, but I'm a Capricorn through and through.
I'm more with Capricorn, and I'm an Aquarius. Um,
That's why we get along.
Well, when I first started studying astrology, I was using Placidus because I didn't know better. And
Right.
it showed my sun to be in the fifth house. And I was like super happy about that. But looking back, I was like, who am I kidding? Like, my sun is definitely in the sixth house. But
I had Lilith in the 5th house in Placidus.
I know somebody who has that, and he's like highly promiscuous. It makes you really magnetic, like super appealing to partners, just like Lilith and Leo. So lots of them can be like super promiscuous,
I
even.
think my Lilith must be broken. Mine's in Leo. I don't.
I think because you have Vesta closer to your
Mm.
ascendant, it overpowers the
Oh,
Lilith.
okay.
And I don't know, I kind of feel like if the planet is before the degree of your ascendant and not after, like it's still in your first house, but I think the ones that come after the ascendant affect you more. But that's just my own theory.
Nothing comes after my ascendant
So yours are all before?
because mine's at the 29th degree, so where else is it supposed to go?
Yeah, I remember that. Fame indicator.
Well, the other thing about the fifth house, well, let me just go back. The reason that Venus does well there is it is, from the Hellenistic tradition, it's the house where Venus finds her joy, and a lot of the significations of the fifth house came from that, before
Hmm.
the later traditions. And another later signification is speculation, like the results from gambling, or also recreation, the things that you do for fun, sports, and hobbies as well.
Risk taking, I heard.
Yeah, speculation, risk taking. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I really forgot to mention it rules over like gambling and stuff. And also, if you have lots of placements here, you're more prone to addiction or like to get addicted to stuff. And I honestly didn't even know that, but I learned that recently. The fifth house is so broad, they just cover so much.
And it's good for synastry.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My sun and Venus fall into my boyfriend's fifth house, and which is Aquarius, and we met gaming, and we like gaming together. So that
Mm,
Aw, he's
that makes total
cute.
sense.
that's perfect.
I love people who have I have Capricorns, so I've never met a Capricorn that I didn't like. Even if they're like super evil, like I still like them. I think it's because it's my house. But in synastry, if your sun falls into their fifth house, they almost always just really love you.
Yeah.
I like Aries. One of my closest friends is an Aries, but I don't think like I love all Aries.
But honestly, I have Venus there, so I'm
Mm,
probably biased.
yeah,
It's Venus and Capricorn in the fifth, and then like
that makes
Saturn.
sense.
I don't know why, like, I have Saturn, all the malefics, like a nice little row of malefics, and then Venus just sitting there. I don't be able
Poor
to.
Well,
Venus.
you have a night chart, right? So the Venus should she's really working to help you out there. That's your most beneficial planet, Venus.
She's working overtime.
Yeah.
I did a lot. Like, honestly, I really don't think the average person dated as much as I've dated. It was such a big part of my life. I started dating really young, like around 13 or 14. And I've had lots of flings and short term relationships. So, very typical to the fifth house. And I also feel like my relationships got better with time. I think that has to do with Capricorn being there. And I feel like found love later in life. And also, I had a child later because of Saturn there.
Hmm. I have the opposite. I've barely ever dated.
Well, you're like the complete opposite with Scorpio Venus in the 12th house. I feel like
Right.
that would imply somebody who's like, I choose you and only you forever until death do us part. And that's it.
And maybe because Aries is very independent, and I have Aries in the 5th house, so
Actually, the people who have Aries or Aquarius in the fifth house almost always are gamers. I've
I'm
seen,
not.
well, you're not.
Mm-mm.
A lot of people that I know that have Aries there are gamers or even Aquarius. But I guess it makes more sense for Aquarius.
Where is your Chase? Where is your Mars located? Because
The 10th house in Virgo.
yeah, so what's your relationship to work? Is that fun for you or?
Okay, this is my relationship to work. I have a problem with authority, and I don't get along with people who are in authority over me, and I enjoy working, but I want to do what I want to do, and I haven't gotten to the point in my career where I can do that without having somebody like tell me what to do. So, I've gone through like over 20 jobs, like probably 25. And every time I'm like always butting heads with people in authority over me, which is so funny because I get along great with everybody, like most of the time. It's just when they're my boss, they're not my friend.
Yeah, because I guess one of the ways you read that, if you're looking at the fifth house, you'd say that Mars is trying to carry out the activities of the fifth house in your 10th house. So do you meet?
And I meet all my boyfriends from work.
Okay, there we go. That's what I that's what I was going towards.
That's yes, all of my boyfriends. And I think it's important to include that Mars is opposing Saturn in my chart.
Right. Yeah. So that would make things well, that's probably
Difficult.
what you were talking about, the struggles.
Mhm. Well, I have Lilith at the 29th degree in the 6th house, and I have Chiron in the 10th house. So I think that also contributes to my issues.
Yeah. That's interesting though, that it did work out that way, that you meet your romance fifth house partners at work.
And also, I have Gemini on the 7th house and Mercury in the 2nd house. So I think that always also indicates work. And all my boyfriends have been coworkers, or fellow students, or this last one I'm dating right now, he was a client.
So maybe you'll do for or you'll be known for or your career will we relate to something that's really fun for you, or is it something creative or working with children, or is it anything like no, no.
Would you say, Mary?
Or your career will just be astrology.
That's what I'm kind of leaning towards right now.
That's fun.
That's fun for me.
I have my part of fortune conjunct the asteroid Psyche, conjunct the asteroid Astro Wizard, all at 11 degrees of Capricorn. And
Oh,
I
that's
feel,
in the 5th house.
yeah, in the fifth house. And I attribute that in specific to like my past life knowledge of astrology. I think that's pretty rare and cool.
Very
Um,
cool.
but everything you were just describing, I relate to as well. Like I've had like
Mm.
so many jobs and always problems with authority figures, but I think it's because I have Saturn in the fifth, so it's kind of similar to
Yeah,
yours.
for sure.
Um, but yeah, so I don't know. Do you feel your Neptune up here? Like, how do you think that manifested for you?
I have no idea.
Isn't it a ruler of your North Node?
Well, you would say that, but I don't do modern rulerships, so
You think it's Jupiter? Really? You don't do modern rulerships? How did I not know
I
this?
don't know. But yeah, Jupiter, I'd use Jupiter as the ruler of my north node. Um, so what is interesting though is that my hobby for a long time was horses, which I think can be associated with Sagittarius. I've seen that somewhere. And then my Jupiter ruling Sagittarius is in the fourth house, which I read, it's probably some medieval delineation, but it has something to do with like, you know, I don't know, like having the king's stable or something like that. So it's directly related to horses. So that's one thing I have there. And I don't really know what the Neptune is about in my fifth house, but that's Neptune for you.
That makes it hard to understand.
Yeah,
Well, you
definitely.
have fun doing the spiritual things.
That's true. There you go. Thank you, Chase.
You're
She's the
welcome.
master astrologer. So
Well, also, if the fifth house speculation, then wouldn't that also be like astrology? Because astrology is kind of speculative.
could be, could be. I mean, I
So,
definitely like for fun for me is Sagittarius type things, you know, like the meaning of life, you know. I mean, I I spend a lot of time just studying all of that, you know, personal development, how the world works, how the universe works, and you know, broader topics, that ninth house stuff, which I believe is kind of, you know, what Sagittarius is. And those are the kinds of things that if I'm just going to be chilling, like I'm going to be either thinking about that or reading something or watching some video or something about those topics.
We love Sag energy.
oh yeah, for sure. I never really thought about Jupiter as the ruler of my north node. I don't know how I feel about that. I well, I have Jupiter in Taurus, but I don't get along with them. So I don't know if that would make it more so the ruler of my north node in the seventh house or not. But I don't know. I think both roads lead to down the same path or whatever. Because the way that I would interpret your chart is would be, well, first of all, it's pretty evident that you're an astrologer with the North Node in Pisces in the eighth house.
Yeah.
But with Neptune being in the fifth house, like I would totally link that to astrology as the ruler of your North Node because it's something fun and speculative and it's a hobby. But, I feel like the way that you also describe it is probably more accurate. So now I'm really thinking about the Jupiter thing.
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, it's kind of like this is how I think of it. They're different systems. So, and in fact, this recent reading I had, I think the woman, she uses Placidus for her own chart, but you know, I use whole signs, and I was showing her how, you know, when this planet is in a different house in Placidus versus whole signs, how I can come up with the same delineation, but from a
Ooh.
different, you know, from a different angle. So it's really like this. I like to say, well, are we going to use metric or imperial, you know, imperial measurements? Like neither one is wrong. It's really just how you use it. Like if
Mhm.
something's X number of feet and something's X number of meters, I mean, it's just, you know, it's just a different way of measuring. So it doesn't matter. Like if you consistently use modern rulers, then you're going to be consistent in your delineations, you know?
True.
I feel like it's different perspectives too.
Yeah,
Like they can be true.
exactly. Yeah.
And they usually all are true. They're just, it's a different way of looking at it.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, that's why I really respect like all forms of astrology, to be honest. Um, the only one I really have an issue kind of digesting is Vedic astrology. Um, I think I just had a bad experience like early on where I got a Vedic reading and it was so bad and negative, and I was just like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like I always wonder if that was just if those are the only parts that have been preserved or if it was just like the reflection of a difficult time period, or you know, because a lot of the, well, maybe not in the Vedic tradition, I think they've held together a lot better than the Western tradition, but some of it, there's a lot that's lost, you know what I mean, and some of it belongs to different types of uh, things that you're trying to do, you know, like different techniques. So I wonder, you know, how much of that is like, okay, this is what we use to find out what terrible is going to happen to you or whatever, and
this is, obviously unrelated to the fifth house, but my dad had an eighth house son. And in Vedic astrology, it says that you're going to die in midlife.
Somebody asked me about that the other day. They were like, does eighth house sun mean short life? And immediately I thought of your dad. And I was
Yeah.
just like, no. Like,
No, no, no.
kind of the back of my mind, I was like, but I know this one person, but I mean, that's one example.
Oh, yeah. But it was just weird because I was like Googling it. And this was when I was still using Placidus, when he got diagnosed with cancer. And it said in his, like, it has information or whatever, like his birth chart or whatever. And it said something about there's going to be traditional astrology indicates with this placement that there will be a crisis in midlife, but if you survive it, you will live a long life. And I was like, okay, so he's going to be fine.
Well, I also read that Uranus and the eighth is like sudden, unexpected death.
Right, because he has Aquarius there. And also, me and Mary were looking at it. He had, what was it?
Flawless.
Flawless, to the degree of his son.
I'll never forget. I had just heard that Phallus was linked to sudden, unexpected death. I did not know that about Phallus. It's an asteroid. What I knew about it was that it brings sudden, unexpected change or like a change of direction. So I wanted to test that theory out, and we looked it up, and it was exactly conjunct his sun in the eighth house at 22 degrees, which is like an infamous degree.
Right. And yeah, like there's so much bad of information about the 22nd degree, and it was his sun's sign and the
Or be or whatever. Yeah, and it was so crazy. Like my heart dropped that moment when I
because
saw.
like me and Mary had known each other for like 3 days. And I was like, so not to trauma dump, but do you think my dad died because his son's in the eighth house?
Well, I did reading and I saw Pluto at 29 degrees of Scorpio in the 12th house,
Oh,
and
in my chart.
I was like, so, there's something's gonna go down there. Like some shit's gonna happen to do with death, but I didn't tell you because I didn't want to
Yeah.
scare you. And literally, like a few days later, you had told me that, and
Mm-hmm.
like so shocked. And then we studied the chart, and this is so off topic, but like it was just really
That's all right.
fascinating when we looked at your dad's chart because there were so many indicators, and that's how I also learned about the fourth house showing how you leave this life, which I'd also,
Right.
but I didn't know if it were true or not.
Because my dad had Mars in the fourth house, and Mars was transiting his first house when he passed.
Yeah, I
So
remember.
me and Mary learned a lot of really interesting stuff about my dad and dying and astrology. So that's a fun way to end this episode.
Well, we need some balance from the joy of the fifth house. We don't want to go overboard with all the joy
Yeah,
and
you
fun
got
and
it.
happiness.
Well,
But I do also want to talk about sometime, eventually, my Saturn return, and we'll talk about all of our Saturn returns, I'm sure, because I'm going through mine right now, and I looked at my Saturn return chart, and in my Saturn return chart, my dad died during my Saturn return. My Saturn return chart is on his birthday in 2024, February 11th, 2024. The sun is in, I have the same rising sign as my dad on this chart. I have the same sun sign to the exact degree in the same house, and the moon to the exact degree in the same house as his moon. So it's so, like, obviously my Saturn return is so linked to my dad in such a, like, way you can't even make up.
that's so mind blowing, honestly, that you just can't make that shit up, like you
I
said.
know.
I wonder if he's like in spirit on the other side, like, and he guided you to that chart.
The way I look at it is like he had a life purpose, and I'm fulfilling it somehow.
Well, didn't you say what held you back from pursuing astrology more was that you didn't want to disappoint your dad because you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's how we should end because ultimately there's always a silver lining.
Yeah, there's always a silver lining.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure his soul is at peace.
Oh, he's great. He's having a great time.
I feel that way too.
Yeah, he's the best. So yeah, okay, that's where we're gonna end, guys. So I'm glad to share that with you.
In memory of Mikey.
In memory of Mikey.
In memory of Mikey.